Brachos Daf. Hey, the first half of this very long blot discusses the halachos of saying Kriya Shema or Shema Nesrei in the presence of disgusting material, or anything which is considered to be disgusting material halachically because it is constantly dealing with it. So the first half of the daf will be discussing one who is wearing tefillin in the bathroom, touching a disgusting material or place. It'll discuss smells, disgusting smells, how much one has to separate from them when saying Shema or Shema Nesrei, passing excrement, a pig's mouth, suffix, where it's not clear if disgusting material is present or not, and dried or evaporated or absorbed disgusting material when its halacha does not apply anymore. So let us begin. The Gemara over here starts off with a comment. Somebody who accidentally entered the bathroom with tefillin on and he's in the middle of using it for a bowel movement. So the halacha, he says, is that he should continue and he should place his hand over the tefillin. So the Gemara says, how could that be? Let him just leave. So the Gemara says he should leave, but he should first finish the part of the excretion that he's working on. He shouldn't stop in the middle, because the Gemara says it could be a sakana to the body. If he draws the waste matter back into the body, it could cause a condition whereby the stomach bloats, and if it's urine, it could cause jaundice, it could cause greenish skin. Now the Gemara discusses, what about somebody who is touching disgusting material? So the two cases are somebody who has excrement on the body, or his hand is touching the airspace of a bathroom. A bathroom in those days had excrement in it at all times, and the entire bathroom itself had the halacha of the waste matter itself. So somebody's in either of two situations. So the Gemara says it's a machlokes between Rav Huna and Rav Chizda. Rav Huna says he's allowed to say Shema because it says Kala Neshama Tahalaka. Neshama we read as Neshima, breathing. It's only the parts of the body involved in breathing that are the ones that are saying Shema. The rest of the body does not have to be in a state of saying Shema. So if he has waste material touching part of his body or a bathroom touching the body, it's not a problem. Rav Chizda says it is a problem because it says Kala Tzmoisai Toimarna Mi Kameicha Hashem Kamaycha, all my limbs say who is like you, Hashem. That means the entire body is involved in the tefillah, and it all has to be ready and appropriate to present tefillah to Hashem. The Gemara now moves on to discuss how far we have to be away from a bad smell while we are saying Shema or Shema Nesrei. The Gemara divides it into two categories. There is a smell that has an identifiable source called a reach sheyesh la'ikr. The fecal matter is there and it is releasing the smell. And then there is a smell that has no source, such as if somebody just passed wind. There is no identifiable object that's releasing the smell. Now, the first kind, reach sheyesh la'ikr, where there's fecal matter there. So it's a machlokes of Rav Huna and Rav Chizda. Rav Huna says one just has to move 4 arms away from the actual fecal matter, doesn't have to move away from the smell. Rav Chizda says one has to move away from the end of the smell 4 arms past that. Now the Gemara is going to try to bring brises to prove which one is correct. A bit of introduction here. There are 3 concerns when it comes to moving away from disgusting objects: sight, smell, and space. One has to have it out of his line of sight in order to be able to say holy words. One has to not be smelling it in order to say holy words, and it also has to be out of one's rishus. This is defined as either 4 amos away, because one's 4 amos is called his chutzner, or it has to be in an objectively separate rishus, such as a higher level or a lower level than the one that he is currently standing on. So the Brisa says as follows. The Brisa says that one may not say Shema within sight of excrement of the following creatures: a person, a dog, a pig, a chicken, nor within sight of a garbage heap, which has all kinds of disgusting stuff in it, if it smells. And the Gemara says if he's turned to the side so that he's not seeing it, he says to make sure that it's not in his rishus. So he's got to be either 4 amos away, or he has to be on a separate rishus for that the plane that it's on is either 10 tefachim higher than the one that he's on or 10 tefachim lower. If he can't turn to the side so that it stays within his line of sight, he has to move far enough away that it's no longer visible. The Gemara says all this applies to Shema Nesrei as well, and then the Brisa adds that if it's a smell that has a source, he has to go 4 amos away from where the smell ends. That means that the smell of the object is not allowed to be in his rishus either. So that's a clear proof to Rav Chizda. So the Gemara says it's not a raya, because although this is a clear proof to Rav Chizda, Rava says that the halacha is not like this Mishnah. The halacha is like a different Mishnah, and he quotes a Brisa now, which says that a person is not allowed to say Shema within sight of the waste matter of a person, a pig, or a dog when skins were put into a pit of this excrement so that it starts to begin the processing of the skin of the animal. But that's all it says. That means that this mission does not hold of that rule that it has to be 4 amos away from the smell. The Gemara now discusses a smell that has no source. So the Gemara says that they asked Rav Sheshes what's the halacha, and Rav Sheshes answered, if you go into the Beis Medrash, you'll see that some of the students are learning and some are sleeping. The ones that are sleeping have no control over themselves, and therefore you could assume that they are passing wind. But the other ones are allowed to continue to learn, so you see it's not a problem. You don't have to move away from it. Then the Gemara says, but that's only true for learning, not for saying Krishma, and it's only true if it's somebody else's wind, not if it's his own. Now the Gemara discusses the status of a passing excrement, where it's not still near somebody, but it's moving, someone's carrying it. So it's Machlokes Abaye and Rava. Abaye says it's not a problem, and he proves it from a brisa that says that if there is a tahor person standing under a tree and something tameh walks by and it doesn't stop, could be a person, or it could be something that was removed from the house of a mitzayra. Either way, it doesn't transmit the tumah to the tahor person who's there, because it's just passing. On the other hand, if it would be the other way, that the tameh person is under the tree and the tahor person passes by, then it would transmit tumah, because the tameh, the source of tumah, is not moving; it's still. So the same thing applies here. If something is in motion, it doesn't count. It does not affect the status of other things in the area. Rava says that's different. There you have a halacha that Tumah follows the place that you're in, that you're settled in. It says Vadad Yeshiv Michutz LaMachane Meishava. It talks about the camp, so it has to affect the area. If it's passing, it doesn't affect the area. But here, as far as the halacha of the cleanliness, when you're saying Shema and Esrei or Shema, it says Vayom Machanecha Kadosh. You just have to have purity, cleanliness in the region. If something's passing through, that messes that up, and therefore you're not allowed to say Shema. Now the Gemara discusses the mouth of a pig. The Gemara says that Rav Papa said that it is considered to be like excrement itself because it is constantly filthy with it. The Gemara asks if it's obvious. Everybody knows that. The Gemara says no, even if he just washed his face in the river, you could still assume that there is something left behind, or that it is problematic because it is so frequently covered with excrement. The Gemara now discusses what is the halacha of a situation where you're not sure if excrement is present or not. You have to assume it's there or not. So Rabbi Yehuda differentiates between solid waste, in which you do have to assume it's there, you may not say words of Shema, and liquid waste, in which you can. There's another version of this where this entire discussion is only relevant to near a garbage heap, but in the house you can assume that there's nothing there. Either way, the Gemara wants to know why the differentiation between solid and liquid. So the Gemara says because solid is an Isser D'Oraisa, liquid is only an Isser D'Rabbanan if one says Kriya Shema near it. What's the reason? Because the pasuk that describes the Isser to say holy words near excrement is referring to at wartime that you must leave the camp to relieve yourself, and as far as solid waste, it says you should cover it, and liquid waste, it doesn't say that you should. So from that, it's apparent that if you would say Shema next to solid waste, it would be a problem. That's why you have to cover it. But next to liquid waste would not be an issue. Now, since it's only made Rabbanan, therefore the Gzeira that Rabbanan made, as usual, only applies to a certain situation, a Vadai. If it's a suffix situation, you do not have to be concerned for it. The Gemara says that the Gzeira only applies to actual liquid waste as it is falling from the body. But once it's on the ground, you don't have to worry about it if it's a suffix. When it's actually falling, then it's an Isser D'Oraisa. When it's on the ground, then it's an Isser D'Rabbanan, and you don't have to worry about it in the case of a suffix. Now the Gemara asks, until when is the urine that is on the floor a problem if it's Vadai there? When is it not a problem at all? How dry does it have to be? So the Gemara quotes a machlokes. There are three opinions that hold that as long as it is wet enough to make something wet, then it's a problem. If it's drier than that, it's not a problem. And the other opinion is anytime that its mark is still visible, it's a problem. This is a much more advanced stage. So the Gemara says that there was a raya to the first opinion from a quote of Rav that says that as far as solid waste goes, as long as it is crusted over, it's not considered to be waste anymore. So if that level of drying for solid waste makes it not a problem, so certainly if it's dried enough that it won't make anything wet, and we're talking about liquid waste, it'll be enough to not be a problem. And the Gemara says that's not alright because there's a machlokes what Rav said. The other opinion is that Rav said that even if it's as dry as a pottery shard, it's still a problem. The Gemara asks, how do you define dried as much as a pottery shard? When is it drier than that and it's okay? Where it says either when it is rolled or thrown and it crumbles, that it shows that it's dried enough that it's just considered to be mud or dirt, and it's not going to cause a halachic problem to say Shema near it. The Gemara quotes an incident to support this. Ravina was walking with Rav Yehuda, who wanted to say Shema. He asked Ravina to check out a piece of excrement that was there to look to see if, according to one version, it had crusted, and according to the other one, it had cracks in it. Now the Gemara wants to know what's the bottom line of this halacha. When is excrement and liquid waste not a problem anymore? So the Gemara says that again, there's a machlokes what the status is if it's dried like cheres. If it's dried like pottery, is that mutter to say Shema near it or not? The Gemara says Rava says I'll settle this. It's dried like cheres, it is usser. It has to be more dry than that. As far as urine, as long as it is wet enough to make something that touches it wet, that's usser. More dried than that is mutter. Now the Gemara challenges this. The Gemara says there's a brayso that says as follows. First of all, liquid waste, urine, that is wet enough to make something else wet is usser, to say Shema near it. If it is absorbed into the ground or it is dried, then it's mutter. So the Gemara says, hold on, let's think about this. Absorbed into the ground or dried is mutter. Now, if it's dried and absorbed into the ground, that means it's gone. Dried means that it was on a non-permeable surface and it's gone. That means that there's no impression of it left. So absorbed should be the same. That is absorbed to the point where you can't see where it was anymore. So that would seem to indicate that it's only that level where there's no indentation, no impression left behind, that's when it's mutter. But if it is wet enough that there's even an impression left behind, it should still be usher. Not like what Rava said. The Gemara said, I don't understand you. The brisa starts off by saying as long as it's wet enough to make something else wet, it's usher. That clearly says that if it's more dry than that, it's mutter, which is exactly what Rava said. So you have a contradiction in the brisa. Good. So you can't start up with Rava from that. The Gemara now attempts to say that the level of drying that urine needs to be mutter is actually machlokes tanoim. The brisa that says the following thing. First of all, the kli, which you usually use to collect urine, is forbidden to say Shema near it, even if it's empty. The urine itself. So the Tanakama says when it's absorbed, it's mutter, and Rabbi Yossi says when it is no longer wet to make other things wet, it is mutter. So the Gemara says clearly, if there's a machlokes here, absorbed, it doesn't mean that it's absorbed to the point that it doesn't make other things wet. It must mean that it's more absorbed than that. What would more absorbed than that be? Where it's not visible where it was anymore. So the Gemara says no, that's not what it means. It means that it's absorbed. The machlokes is whether or not it's enough dried if it's wet to make something wet, but that other thing that's wet can't make a third thing wet. That's the machlokes. Rabbi Yossi says that would be where it becomes mutter, and the Tanakama says no, it's got to be dried to the point that it doesn't make anything wet. The Gemara now refers to the halacha that the parts of the body may not see or be in contact with the erva while one is saying a bracha. In the Mishnah, we had learned that if one is in the mikvah and he wants to say the bracha, he can. So the Gemara asks, how can he? But there is no separation between the heart and the erva. So the Gemara says the water must have been cloudy. Then the Gemara quotes a brisa, which discusses one who wants to say a bracha while he's undressed and he's in clear water. So the Tanakhama says it's not a problem. And the Gemara says that he doesn't hold that it's a problem for the head, nor the heart, nor any other part of the body to be in the line of sight, ki'ilu, of the erva. However, the Yesh Omrim in the Mishnah says that he has to splash the water around so that it's rough and you cannot see through it, and therefore you will have a separation, and the head and the heart will not see the erva. Now the Gemara talks about touching. There's two versions of this Gemara. One is that it's a machlokes of Abaye and Rava, whether or not any part of the body is allowed to touch the erva during a bracha. Abaye says asur, Rava says mutter. And the other version is that everybody agrees that touching is usher, and the machlokes between Abaye and Rava is halacha l'maisa what to do about whether the heart is allowed to see the erva. The Gemara ends off that the halacha is it is forbidden for any part of the body to touch the erva, but other parts of the body besides for the heart and the head is permitted for it to be in a ki'ilu line of sight of the erva. The Gemara now moves on to discuss the halacha that one is not allowed to see waste material or the erva while he's saying Shema. The Gemara says that there's a difference between the two, and that is covering with glass, which one can see through. So as far as tzoa is concerned, as far as waste material is concerned, that's sufficient because the pasuk says v'chisisa es, it has to be covered, and it's covered with glass. As far as an erva, glass that you can see through doesn't help because it says you shouldn't see the erva. And even though it's covered, you can still see it. That doesn't count. What do you do to cover waste material? So Abai says you can spit on it. Rava says it's got to be a nice thick layer of spit. If it's in a hole, Rava says you can put your shoe over it and you can say Shema. The Gemara asks, what if you have waste material stuck to the shoe? The Gemara says, Teiku. We're not going to know the answer to that. Rava says, what about if you have an akum who is undressed and you're seeing his erva? Does that count? So the Gemara says, yes, it does. The Gemara says, well, for sure it does. Why would you think that it does not? The Gemara says, because you might think that the flesh of an akum counts as a chamar, as an animal, because... So... we see that it's not, because describing Noach and his sons covering him, it says erva savihim loiro. So you see, even an akum is referred to as erva. Now the Gemara turns its attention to the halacha that we had seen in the Mishnah, that if you put clear water on dirty, smelly water, it becomes mutter to say Shema. So the Mishnah seems to be referring to what water that you go into. So the Gemara says, how could you have so much clear water that it could mevatel, it could cancel the effects of the smelly water that you are doing tevilah in? You're going to go into it. Must be a ton of water. So the Gemara says, it's not how you read the Mishnah. You shouldn't go into smelly water. You shouldn't go into water used for soaking clothing and processing things. Those are all foul. But there's no way to solve that. But as far as urine, you can solve that by adding some water to it. Now the Gemara wants to know how much water should you add. The Gemara has a machlokas if it is a drop or if it's a revius. Revius is a revius of a lug, about 3.5 ounces. The Gemara has a machlokas what the machlokas is. Is the machlokas if the water is there first and then the urine is added on top of it? But if the water is added later to existing urine first, it's definitely a revius, or is it the other way? When there's a machlokas is if you're adding the water later, but if the water is there first, it certainly has to be just a drop and doesn't have to be a revius. Halach l'maisa Rav Yosef paskin that you need a revius. The Gemara now discusses the halachas of a chamber pot, which is a vessel that was placed near the bed to be used as a bathroom in the middle of the night. The Gemara says whether it was used for liquid waste or solid waste, meaning that's its designed purpose, which is always used for, it is forbidden to say Shema near the thing, even if it is empty and clean. Rashi explains that it's made out of absorbent pottery material, earthenware. The Brisa that we are quoting continues, and it says, urine itself, you must put water inside. How much water do you have to put? Again, the machlokas, if it's a revius or if it's just a little bit. The Brisa now discusses if this chamber pot is behind the bed or under the bed. Does that make a difference? 3 opinions. The first opinion, Tana Kama, says that it's a difference where the bed is. Either way, the same halacha applies. You're not allowed to say Shema with the thing around. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, there is some uncertainty as to what he said here. He says that it makes a difference whether the thing is behind the bed or it's not. In one case, you have to go for Amos, and in one case, you don't have to. It wasn't clear whether if it's behind the bed you don't have to go for Amos, and if it's in front of the bed you have to go for Amos, or if it's behind the bed you can't say Krishma at all, and if it's in front of the bed you have to go for Amos. The Gemara resolves the first way. Behind the bed you do not have to go anywhere. In front of the bed you have to go for Amos, and then you can say Shema. And the third opinion that's quoted in the Brisa is Rav Shimon ben Elazar, says you have to get the thing out of the house or bury it under the bed. And the Gemara quotes another Brisa, which has the shitos of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel and Rav Shimon ben Elazar flipped, and the Gemara wants to know which is the correct version. The Gemara attempts to prove that it is Rav Shimon ben Elazar who is the one who says that it has to be out of the house, because we know from elsewhere that Rav Shimon ben Elazar's shita is that an entire house is considered to be like 1/4 amma range. But being 4 ammas away doesn't help. Rashi says he doesn't know where that is, that we've seen that Rav Shimon ben Elazar holds that way. The Gemara now wants to know if it's under the bed, how high could the bed be and still cover it up to the extent that it's considered to be, that it's not there and it's mutter. The Gemara says if it's 3 tvachim or less, it's for sure mutter because it's lavud. It's considered as if the bed is connected to the floor and anything under it is buried. If it's higher than 10 tvachim, for sure it's not considered covered. In between is a shaila. The shaila was asked by a few people to a few other people, and there is no final psak. Now what is the halacha maisa? Rav says halacha is like Rav Shimon ben Elazar, it has to be out of the room. Bailey ben Rav Yaakov says that as well. Rav says halacha is not like Rav Shimon ben Yaakov. Now the Gemara refers to the halacha of having a Sefer Torah or other Dvarim Shebekdush in the room when one is together with his wife. The Gemara has an incident where the son of Rav Yitzchak Bar Shmuel was unable to consummate his marriage, and they found out there was a Sefer Torah in the room, and his father said, "Get it out of there, it's a tremendous sakana, it's a dangerous situation for somebody trying to be together with his wife while there is a Sefer Torah or tefillin in the room, because it's forbidden to do that. It has to be in a kli b'zeh a 2 layers of container." Abaye says that only works if the containers are not devoted to this Sefer Torah, but if it's specific for and it's always used, then it doesn't matter if you have 10 layers, it still doesn't count. Gemara says that Rava says that a glima akmentara, a box of svarim, counts as being inside a double layer of